All right, welcome everyone to the HVAC 2.0 show, where we get together and we talk about stuff we've screwed up and how we hopefully fix that. Well, not always, but tonight that's definitely the case. So, got a bunch of the guild here tonight, and we are going to discuss a project that, frankly, has been messing with my head all day. Because of all the projects that we did, this is the one that I have the most negative emotions about. So, and it's really kind of a shame because this was a spectacularly difficult project that not that many people could have pulled off. And we did the shell side, and it worked pretty well. But the HVAC side was not that great. And man, talk about a whole bunch of different failures in process. So there's actually a whole section of the HVAC 2.0 process that exists because of this job. So um, uh, this is not necessarily the best thing to do. By the way, this is a picture that I took from the backyard. So this is on Lake Erie in Cleveland. There's a rainstorm coming in. It was a great backyard. And it's a pretty good sized house, about 5,000 square feet, somewhere in that range. A pretty wealthy client. And it was a cool house, really. But this is a story about how bad process kicked my butt. And so we're going to work through that, and I'll show a bit of the project, but I think we're actually going to kick most of the project to next week, so we aren't trying to jam too much in. So in case anybody doesn't know, Mistake on the Lake is a inside joke with Cleveland, which is known as the Mistake on the Lake because our river burned repeatedly and actually was why the EPA was founded. By Richard Nixon, oddly enough. To be fair, I'm from Cleveland. I may not live there anymore. For years, I spent my whole life when somebody asked where I'm from, and I'd go, Cleveland, I'm sorry. Like I felt like a Canadian, sorry. But it's actually a pretty cool town now. We just, oddly enough, don't live there. We wanted mountains. So, and since most of my work is remote, I can actually do that. So here's some of the things that I learned on this. So the biggest thing at the beginning is for planning, when you're going to figure out what you're going to do to a large job that's very complex, don't skimp on this. And I did, and it was freaking greed behind it. So totally got me on that. Wealthy clients really don't want to collaborate. They want to tell you what to do and then have you own everything, and then oftentimes end up calling whatever shots they want and then being mad at you when their stupid idea doesn't work. Because I definitely felt that a few times on this. Be careful to not want a job more than the client does. I had a couple of issues with this, so we'll look at another one where I wanted to be the hero. I put my cape on. And I'm like, hey, these people have all kinds of problems and I know how to fix it. And I'm going to fix it for them. And next thing I know, I'm basically groveling. And that's a very bad way to have a relationship with a client. You want to be equal, not parent-child. Get deposits or have it in writing, or else job dates are pushed back. This was a big problem because I planned on 3 solid weeks for this job. The spray foam crew that I was working with, at the time, it was their second gig, so they could only work weekends and then evenings. So there was a lot of stuff that had to happen to get everything ready for them and get them spraying. And then the clients, I kept pushing them to get a deposit because it was 50% deposit, and it was a week into that 3 weeks before we got it. And that led me to the last point, which is you can gain 10 pounds in 2 weeks. I don't recommend it. This basically broke me, and like I continually got fatter after this, and I've only just now been backing up the train 8 years later. So be careful with insanely stressful jobs and doing things bad process wise, because it can really mess you up. So a lot of what this is about ultimately is the concept of tacit versus explicit, which it's too bad Abby's not here tonight. He's the one that taught me this. So tacit knowledge is knowledge that's basically below the surface. So this is stuff that you get by doing things more than anything else. So it's unwritten. like elusive. It's intuitive. There's lots of intuition involved in tacit knowledge. So this is the kind of thing that as an expert or a practitioner, you have in your head, but it's really difficult to teach because explicit knowledge is pictures, it's precise documents, numbers, it's things that are written down, it's manuals, it's things like that. Like what we're going to look at on this project, because I'm at least going to tease you with one of the pieces that we did, because it's the only time I did this and I really don't want to do it again. We spray foamed inside a finished house. Not that fun. As 1 star, do not recommend. It worked, but man, it would have been a lot easier to run cellulose, but there were a bunch of reasons we couldn't on this one. But what we're trying to do with this show is take a bunch of tacit knowledge that's in our heads, things that we have done that are not well known, and do our best to make them explicit. In fact, the whole 2.0 system is a lot about building, even if it's not truly explicit, we're creating processes that naturally build in our tacit knowledge, sometimes even when we don't fully understand what we're doing. Like we just have a gut that this is the way, the path, the process to follow. So when we say the process is sacred, that's because we're trying to get your butt out of a sling or keep your butt out of a sling, where I put myself in one on this job and it sucked. Don't do this. I can't tell you how stressed out I was. I had to call in so much extra help to get this thing done on time. And we did, but I don't want to do it again. And so why so much stupidity in all this? That's right, money. So we had a trip to Europe scheduled. We had bought a 370Z, and then 6 weeks later, Rachel was pregnant. And that is one of the only true 2-seater cars on the market. So we sold it, put most of it to pay down the house, and then we took a little bit of it and went to Europe. But this was the piece of it that would make us comfortable in going. So I wanted that job more than the client wanted it. That was a problem. Don't do that. And actually, another thing, I remember the Sex Pistols came to Cleveland years ago. And I remember the ad saying, it's the Sex Pistols, but those guys hate each other. Why are they doing this? That's right, money. That totally stuck with me. And then I was totally guilty on this one. So one of the big mistakes I made is Yoda, planning, do or do not. There is no try. So I offered hourly planning because this client primarily wanted to deal with ice dams. We talked about ice dams a couple of weeks ago. It's where in cold climates where you get a whole bunch of snow, you get a bunch of snow on the roof, it melts, it refreezes in the gutters, and then it forms a pool of water behind it. When that pool gets deep enough, it pushes into the house underneath the shingles and can cause all sorts of damage. So that is what the client wanted first and foremost. But we have the comprehensive planning process because of this job. Because I tried to give them an in the middle where I would just figure out the shell side. And then as soon as I finish it, he starts asking HVAC questions. And I'm like, damn it, we didn't do load calcs. Like that wasn't the stuff that we were doing. And then we had to back into it. Like I hadn't taken the measurements correctly to do all of that stuff. I wasn't paying attention to the HVAC as I was doing it. I was only looking at shell, but whenever you look at a job, you have a different way of kind of looking at it depending on what the issues are that you're trying to deal with. So I had my insulation and air sealing eyes on. I was not paying attention to HVAC. So fundamentally, it was the same amount of money, and I could cut Ted out because I didn't have to pay him for doing the load calc. So this was greed on my part so that I could go to Europe. And
I ended up being the guy there, dude. You're going to go into this not following the process. You're going to get your ass handed to you because this guy's going to scope creep you.
Man, did he ever? Did he ever? So don't offer hourly planning. Like if you're going to get into really figuring out what the house needs, figure out what the house needs. Don't do part of the job, figure all the pieces out. And it's not that incredibly difficult. We can teach it.
So one of the upsides of this job, though, is that it made us aware that we needed to come up with an explicit way for people who are doing comfort consults to responsibly avoid responsibility. And a lot of that came out of this job, because there are a lot of times the homeowner is not going to want to pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for comprehensive planning process, and they will be willing to assume the risk. So it's about your being explicit and helping them understand that if they want prioritization, they're going to need a comprehensive planning process. If they want best guesses, they can guess as well as you can. And these are good things to do. The work that was done here is beautiful. And if people want to see it, Nate's going to,
I'll tease it tonight, and then we'll actually hammer through all of it next week.
yeah.
Because as I'm putting the deck together, I'm like, this is way more than an hour, and I don't want to lecture. I want to actually have a conversation with everyone here, because there are some very, very good minds here. And I don't
so the Comfort Consult here is designed to help them make really good informed decisions about HVAC.
Yep.
And anybody that's interested in learning this process, remember not to do things that go outside of HVAC in the Comfort Consult until you're really good at responsibly avoiding responsibility.
Yep.
Unless you're going to do a comprehensive planning process.
Or you have a very good understanding of shell and a high degree of certainty that something will work. Like a crawl space encapsulation is usually a pretty good bet, but it could screw other stuff up. So you better think it through and make sure that that's a good idea. But this was greedy. It was stupid, and stupid hurt. And so I get to tell the story and have a kind of embarrassing thing. Like I said, I should be really proud of this project, and really it just fucks with my head. This is just, it's really unpleasant to think back on this whole project.
Show us on the doll where this job hurt you.
He's about to.
So I don't know if anybody here has seen the movie Get Shorty. It came out a while ago. It's a really funny movie. Really good soundtrack too, if you like jazz. And it was about, they're trying to get Danny DeVito, who's this famous actor, which of course he is, to come into a movie. And he comes in as this weird prima donna movie star, and he walks into lunch and he orders something that's just not on the menu at all. He's like, I'd like egg white omelets, and cook the scallions a little bit, but until they're just brown, don't burn them. Just a little bit of olive oil, no salt, and bring enough for the whole table. And the other people are like, what the hell? I don't want to eat that. Everybody reacts. And then he gets up and he leaves before the food comes. So nobody is happy, but he dictated what the results were and what the methods were. And that was how this project felt at a lot of times for me. So I was letting the client dictate too much. So you can give clients choices, but the choices need to be ones that keep you in control. And I made multiple errors on that front. Now, this is still relatively early. This is 2015. So I got better at this, but this one was not that fun. So we'll come back to the philosophical discussion in a minute, but I want to show you just a little bit about this project. So this is a handwritten floor plan, which I had to throw together after the fact because I didn't offer him the full CPP. That sucked. I get to drive back out there. It's an hour from my house to go get the drawings for this. It's always an hour from the house, man. And so each one of these, this is a separate attic that needed to be treated. And most of these, most of them got closed cell spray foam. So this one here was flat, and this one here over his daughter's bedroom was flat. But everything else is spray foam. And some of them got slightly different treatments within that. But all of these had to be measured, and then a quote had to be put together for it.
Why were there so many different attics? Was the house added on to numerous times?
Yep. Yeah, it was 1940s, and it was the beginning of the house, and then 1990s afterwards. I should have put a clean floor plan in here, but this is the garage up front, which got added, and then on the second floor had a guest suite in it. This room on the ends they called the Lego room, and it just basically got taken over by the kids for toys. And daughter's room was here, son's room was here, and then the master's in the back. And then the first floor is, big, and like this whole back section was added on. And then like this part here that I have marked off with an X, this is the family room downstairs that bumped out, but it was first floor only. So just a very complex house with all kinds of roof lines, and it's a 1.5 story for a bunch of it. Some of it's what I call 1 3/4, which is where you get a little bit of slope ceiling, but then it drops into the outside wall. So there's no knee wall. So just a really complex job. And this is the kind of job that found me. Because when somebody called you, if they made it to EnergySmartOhio.com, like,
they had spent a lot of time trying to fix their problems.
Yeah. Well, and I spent a lot of time writing about all
exactly these problems. Yeah, unsolvable problems.
Yep. So we could deal with stuff that nobody else could. But sometimes I totally screwed the pooch in the process. So we're going to look at just one. We're going to look at, oh shoot, you know what? There's a whole nother thing. It's actually right here, which is the side of his daughter's room. And what we did on this one, so if you remember a couple of weeks ago, I showed the hybrid where we dense packed this ceiling with cellulose, which is easy peasy. You use spray foam down here in a knee wall attic, and then you make sure this is good and packed full with foam, and then you can dense pack from the top. Or you can actually dense pack from below as well, potentially as well. But in this case, this is spray foam for the slope ceiling. Do not try this at home. I'd love to say I'm a trained professional. I don't really want to do this one again. So this is the one we're going to look at in this case. So here is the ceiling, the slope ceiling. And on the other side of this, it continues down, and there's a little knee wall attic there, and you could actually crawl through that, and you'd pop out as a secret passageway in the back, which was kind of cool. There was a hatch on both sides of this little knee wall. So I thought that was pretty nice. And so we marked where we were going to cut. So like we were cutting far enough down that we could spray foam up this far and also down from the top. So the front attic above this also got spray foam on the roof deck. And so we had to connect it. So we didn't have to cut the whole ceiling out, but we needed to cut enough out that we could reliably foam this spot here. So that's what we did. And this is my old foreman, Clayton. Clayton's freaking awesome. He's just an amazing guy. And
talented, hardworking, reliable.
Good. Yeah. Good attitude. Just a really spectacular guy. And so I called him in to help with this. And so here he is cutting this out. He should totally be wearing some eye protection. We'll just ignore that for the moment. And I'm actually just going to skip this, I think, but this is a video of him popping this drywall out. Oh, no, I guess we are going to watch it. It's just kind of wild taking all this stuff down. And so we got it down, and this part of the house was built in the 40s, but then it got reinforced a little bit. So you can see that it's got a sistered joist here, and then that's new decking up there. But we weren't totally sure what was here, except for we knew that this duct was here. So we needed to be really careful with this duct that was running from below to upstairs and then came out in the daughter's bedroom. So here's some blown cellulose that was in there. So we had to suck all this stuff out. This is Clayton's brother, Cameron. And so he was helping on all this, and you can see we're getting pretty close to cleared out. Here it is all cleaned out. And then this is Donnie, who Donnie hated Nate picking. When I went and was looking for all the little things, I don't think he ever got over it. Gary totally got it. Donnie hated it. Every now and then he'd grab a paint can for me if I happened to spray something. He'd go in there like, you go fix that. But he was really fun to work with. We get along great. He's awesome. But we have this all prepped because remember, like, well, there's plastic hanging here, and then we have plastic behind us. Well, you can actually see there's a zip wall here that we built because this is a little girl's bedroom that we're working in. They're on vacation, but we're in there. And so now it's all prepped to spray.
Yeah, you don't want the overspray to get on the little girl's bed or photographs or.
It was a lot of prep getting this ready to do this way. So you can see there's a little overspray down here, and then definitely on the edge going down. And then we put some foam a little bit underneath the duct, but we can't do that much. This is a 5.5 inch cavity with a 6 inch duct. So we're already a 1/2 inch short. So I'm sure that got full flow, right? That's how flex works, right? It flexes.
Well, if you make it oval, it's even better flow.
Mash it down.
Let's make sure you pinch it real tight somewhere too. And right after that happened, this is when I took this picture in the back. Like we finished for the day and we all went out back and had a beer because it had been a stressful day. And then we came back and here's hanging some drywall in here and then mudding it. This is my old neighbor, Joe. Joe is awesome. He tapes drywall for the union for 40 years. And I was saying before the show, he had a tree fall on his house right next door. And if it wasn't for the lath and plaster, it would have knocked that house over and it would have hit mine, actually. But the house survived, and he made a master bedroom, combined 2 bedrooms into one. And then he brings me up with a 500-watt halogen light and says, "Nate, show me where the seam is." I couldn't find it. He's a really good taper. And he saved my butt a couple of times. Like I had one of my crew members put their foot through the ceiling in a $1 million house with a custom textured drywall ceiling. And I look at it, I'm like, I've never seen this texture before. I'm like, well, surely we can figure out some way to fix it. And here the wife was home, but the owner was away on a cruise, and he texts back, "That ceiling finish is one of the reasons I bought that house." Like, you gotta be kidding me. What are the odds of that? So Joe managed to match that finish, and he came in here and did a good job. And what's funny is this client got home and didn't believe that we'd done the work because we matched the paint so well and the drywall so well. You couldn't even begin to tell that we had been there, which is generally what you want. When you're doing good shell work, you should hide it. The high performance house shouldn't look any different. Like Wednesday Addams and the old Addams family, she said, homicidal maniacs look just like everyone else. High performance homes should look just like everyone else. So here it is, mudded. And there was one more step I didn't get a picture of where we got it painted. And yeah, it was back. This whole thing, you can avoid this. Avoid it. That was not that much fun, or charge more money than we did, or have a longer timeline for getting it done. That just was frustrating. So back to the philosophy of all of this. Projects like this, and all of us here have stories like this, because we've gone out and we've done things and we've learned things that you can't read in books because it was painful or stupid or out of the ordinary or whatever it was. So experience creates internalized learning that book learning can't replace. That's your tacit knowledge. And then you all know, I love this meme of good judgment comes from experience, and experience, well, that comes from poor judgment. So not nailing this client down well enough was a big mistake.
Yeah, you could do really great work, and then it ends up being a totally shitty job.
This one was frustrating. Next week, we'll get into the HVAC, which was absolutely not what I specified or expected. And it didn't improve comfort or energy. Like, I expected both, and we got neither. That was not that great. And also, a bad system will beat a good person every time. So if you run on the client's process rather than your own process, you're going to get beat. So make sure you're setting the process. And you can give them choices the whole way. This is choose your own adventure. You can do this. You can do this. Here's your likely odds. Here's your prices. Which one would you like? Like that's the way that you want to handle it. And I did not do a good job on this. And again, this is me taking a bunch of tacit stuff that we learned and trying to make some of it explicit, but there's a lot more. And all of this, thinking back on this project built a lot of what have become the HVAC 2.0 principles. So the process is sacred. There's a very specific order to do things in. Be very careful when you go out of order or if you split things. And this is true for so much stuff. Tanner, your moves in martial arts, there's a way to do them, right? And
Absolutely.
Wax on, wax off. You have to learn those. And then you learn how to put them together, and then you can begin to improvise some. But if you don't have your basics down, if you go out of process, you'll get laid out, like you've told me. And in this case, the client got me, and it's a bummer. I should have a good relationship with them, and I just don't.
Yeah, the work was so beautiful.
Yeah,
they should be thinking that you're awesome.
Well, I was also frustrating to deal with because I was pissed at them for a bunch of it. So like that didn't help. But the reason that I was mad at them was my own poor job setting things up. So ultimately, all of this comes back to me. Oh, hey, Tim. That's cool. My oldest buddy is here, Tim Hall. We've known each other since we were 7. Second one is be the guide, not the hero. If you want the job and you want to do perfect and you want to rescue the person and save them and make their lives better, you're going to get hosed because you're going into child mode and they're going to go into adult. Tanner, you got something.
It works great if you want to be a charity. If losing money is okay and you can go in and just do whatever, sure. But if you're actually wanting to make money, I mean, you're not. Heroes don't make money; they get bit.
Yep, it's when you irresponsibly take responsibility, which is what I did on this one. So we say responsibly avoid responsibility. Find the sweet spot where what's the best path forward for them that fits their goals, needs, and budget. Do no harm and learn by teaching. These are principles. I totally raped and pillaged these. So this was not pretty. So I screwed up the process. We already had a process to an extent, and I ignored it. I gave them the option of hourly consulting versus doing the full planning process, which was a big mistake.
Well, I think he pushed you, didn't he?
There was some of that too.
I mean, you offered, and
I offered and he took it.
No, I mean,
I shouldn't have offered.
You offered the comprehensive planning process. And he's like, well, what you're suggesting here is obvious. We don't need all that audit stuff. We just need to spray foam. Yeah. And then it got into the scope creep of, well, what about our equipment? And what about running dehumidifiers? And we got these other problems and woo.
Yeah. And all of a sudden I didn't have everything I needed.
The 4 questions.
I'm going to blame myself way more than Tom.
Yet.
This was me. More so than anyone.
Okay.
And, I was weak as well. And we all have that tendency. And especially when I knew I had an expensive vacation coming up that I wanted to pay for. So be careful not to put yourself in bad financial positions. You end up doing things that you're not proud of. I think all of us probably have an example of that. Here's one of mine. And then do no harm. The thing that I messed up on this was not watching the HVAC because I was tired of the project and the client at that point. And so the HVAC guy just did whatever the hell he wanted, and he ignored my spec. Like I spec'd a variable speed heat pump for the second floor because it wasn't that much area. It didn't need a furnace. The load up there was like 2 tons. And of course, it got a 60K single stage and a 3-ton AC, or maybe it was a 2-ton AC. But I mean, like totally wrong for what that space needs. So it didn't
spray foam space.
Yeah, exactly. And what even doing a furnace in a spray foam space, like the load on that second floor is not much anymore. So I didn't watch it close enough because I was tired. So I can't say that I fully gave do no harm. I also, because I didn't do the full CPP, I didn't give him all of the options that he had to help him understand what they are and the ramifications were. And that was also an error. So there were a bunch of different things. I did work to find the sweet spot. Part of it was he didn't really care what the budget was, just make it work. Although then his HVAC guy talked him down 20 grand or 15 grand on equipment to put basic stuff in. And learn by teaching. I'm not breaking that because we're doing this tonight. And so much of what we do comes down to our prime directive is to provide excellent experiences for both you, the contractor, and your client homeowners. So doing one or the other isn't that hard. You just screw the other side. We all see that kind of stuff going on. Jeff, what's your background about again?
1 hour? 1 hour, 59 minutes?
59 minutes. Calm down. All 59.
Oh,
59,
all
59.
59?
Yeah. So, I mean, you want to provide good experiences, but balancing both of these at the same time is really difficult. But in this case, I got neither. So I hated it and my client hated it. So that sucked. And he got a good job, but like, he's not going to refer anyone to me. So,
the house doesn't work all that well, even though it's got all kinds of equipment, like 2
3 systems,
dehumidifiers, and
yep, 3 furnaces and air conditioners in 5,000 square feet.
But those dehumidifiers are cheaper. Keep that in mind.
yep,
To operate, right?
Actually, I wonder if they've failed yet. I'm not going to ask.
Well, they got to run like crazy. Doesn't the guy like opening windows on the lake?
Oh yeah, that was the other fun thing. Was he's like, so the house is really humid, so I set the temperature really cold. So he sets it like 66 degrees. It's on the lake. Lake Erie is shallow. It's by far the shallowest of the Great Lakes. So it's about 50 feet deep on average. And when you get to shore, you routinely get to 70 to 80 degree water temperatures by end of season. You know, mid-July on, you're into the 70s and 80s. I mean, it's totally swimmable. It's a very pleasant lake to swim in. And so that's not going to lead to high dew points, is it?
Nah.
Especially when the lake is burning.
With the window open all night and the air conditioner running at 66 degrees, can you see any potential risk here? I mean, this is like Miami all over again. He's operating the house like it's climate zone 1, just totally wrong. So, yeah, that was, it sucked for both of us. So both of us kind of regret the project, and that's a shame because like I said, the shell side of it was really, really good.
Right. I wonder, any ice damming?
There was a little bit still. But
all those different roofs.
Yeah, when you get valleys mixed with short gutters, you can never stop ice damming. You can only reduce it. Mm-hmm. And when you spray foam, you're also not dealing with the roof joists, so the snow on the roof joists will still melt. Joe Stiebrick talked about that. He did this crazy job to his attic, and then he's driving by to show it to someone, and he purposely brings them in at night because if it was during the day, they could see where the snow was melting on his high-performance home. And he ended up like putting a whole nother layer on top of that to have continuous insulation on top. Frankly, that's more of a vanity thing than anything because that probably saved him $50 a year in energy. Like, it doesn't matter. At that point. So like in existing homes, thermal bridging, is it worth 50 grand to you? We can fix the thermal bridging, maybe 100. Like my old house, it was going to be at least 100 grand to do exterior wrap on it so that I could save $250 a year. We modeled it. Like there's some stuff you just don't worry about. But anyway, you're never going to stop ice damming. You can just substantially reduce it. And so there were still a couple of places where he had heat cables on them, but he said we reduced them like 80 or 90%, which is about what you can expect when you do a good job.
I love that picture of Johnny.
Yeah, I found it on his Facebook. So
nice.
Yeah, he's Mr. Tough Guy here with a retro check blower door frame behind him. So this is Johnny's question that helps avoid this whole situation. And boy, I wish I had this question then. If you spend this money and it doesn't work, are you going to be okay with it? Will you blame me? And if the answer is no, I won't be okay with it, and yes, I will blame you, well, now we have a problem. And that's where you might sell the comprehensive planning process, or you get them to accept the risk of failure for whatever it is. So these are things that we've learned, and I have to say, yay, Johnny. So that's just awesome that he came up with this line. And we call him the bull in the china shop because, man, how many times had we do like, don't do that, dude, it's going to hurt. And he goes out, it's like, oop, that hurt. And then sometimes he's like, well, that worked. All right, we need to understand, is that repeatable, or is that just because Johnny's Johnny? So he definitely has helped us polish a bunch of things, but he's like a goon. You never say die.
That's sort of brown belt, black belt stuff. Anybody wants to try some of Johnny's off the process tactics, go out there and learn the process first.
Yes. And then
same
you can
with Jeff.
Don't
follow Jeff's tactics because he can deviate. Once you become a master, you can deviate because you know what you're doing.
You got to learn how to throw a regular punch before you can try spinning shit.
There you go.
Exactly. So Johnny has tried all kinds of stuff, and he's really helped work through the process for us. So that's been awesome. At first, he was just so wild. He was just like uncontrollable. And we're all just like, what is going on? Who is this guy? Then he started sticking to the process, and like, we're just like, you did what? Huh? So like his first CPP, he went out there and he sold a $68,000 job. It was 3 systems and a big air spray foam job and aero barrier, which none of us had tried before. And it ends up just kind of leaving glue everywhere and didn't work as well as any of us hoped. But he tried it. So in that case, the China definitely didn't break. The client was happy spending $70,000. Pretty wild. And this is $70,000 3 or 4 years ago, keep in mind. So like all these numbers have gotten a lot bigger now. That'd be 100 now. So responsibly avoiding responsibility, there's 2 rules. If you aren't getting paid and if you don't have control over outcomes, don't take responsibility. So I was getting paid, but I didn't have control over a bunch of the outcomes on this project. So I broke this rule. I was irresponsibly taking responsibility.
If you say this to yourself 5 times, when you find yourself in this situation, the hair on the back of your neck will stand up.
Yep.
So
trust
just
your intuition
5 times and then pay attention to what happens to the back of your neck.
And this is kind of the way out right here. If you feel yourself about ready to irresponsibly take responsibility and take responsibility for something that you don't have control and you're not getting paid for, this is the get out of jail free card right here. If you spend this money and it doesn't work, are you going to be okay with that? Will you blame me?
It is very worth just memorizing that line and then utilize it, because like you mentioned before, it takes a while for that tacit information to kind of start to develop. And so if you'll just start using this line that you can just memorize, you'll begin to look back after the fact, an hour, 2 hours, a day later, and you'll be like, oh, wow, like I really avoided something there, or I could have done something a little bit different, or this and that. And then as you start building on looking back and reflecting, going, okay, I could have done things a little different, that's when it'll start to kind of kick in. Then it'll become second nature rather than trying to think of it while you're going along.
Yeah, that's just like learning any skill. One thing that I deeply regret from learning trumpet was I never fully memorized and committed to the scales. Because when you commit to the scales and you want to improv, which I picked up the trumpet to learn jazz. That's why. Like I was 9 years old. Like I want to play trumpet so I can play jazz. Ken will agree with that. He plays drums, amongst other things. But if you don't know your scales cold so that there's no question in your mind what notes you can use and what notes you can't, depending on what key you're in. You're going to suck at improv because you have to think. You need to get to where you act. You don't have to think anymore. And so following the process will, it's wax on, wax off. If you get used to following the process and you do it without thinking, you can then do some tweaks and maneuvers and try some other things. But until you've really got it down, be careful. And until then, memorize stuff like this. This is a great line. Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we have too many people that want to be heroes, and I think they'd be too afraid to say something like that. So if you're probably too afraid to say something like that, it means you probably should say something like that.
If you feel it, say it.
Yep.
That's
A lot of Sandler will help people overcome their natural inclinations.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't follow the buyer's process. The buyer's process is to pump you for as much information as humanly possible and not buy anything. That's buyer's process. So if you aren't really careful about how you work that, you're going to get stuck in their process. So speaking of process, hopefully this is familiar at this point. There's the two main questions for the 2.0 process for homeowners. Are there comfort problems to solve? No. Free quote. Yes. Comfort consult. This involves a blower door and a load calc that's real, because it's not just based on educated guesses. It's based on enough hard metrics to be accurate. But you should either do a tailored replacement, because HVAC alone is likely to solve problems, or do a comprehensive planning process where you go the whole way through and you do the full audit and you do more advanced energy modeling and you come up with work scopes for everything and different plans for them to get things done. So there's a lot to this. Again, this is a very small percentage of jobs. Like I honestly don't think it's going to break 1%. And meanwhile, in this one, oops, I tried to do something in the middle. There is no in the middle for this. And the reason that this flow chart looks like this and doesn't have three options here is this job. This is the one that did it. Like, this sucks. I don't want anybody to do this again. So it's not wax on, wax kind of off, and wax off. It's wax on, wax off. You've got your two choices. Pick one. And be really careful. And here's in this process, if this is something you're kind of curious about, the vast majority of people are going to do a free quote, 70 or 75%, 25 or 30 will end up with a comfort consult. At first, you'll probably be like 5 or 10 comfort consults. And actually, at first, you can basically run zero, price yourself out. And then of the people who do a comfort consult, basically almost everyone does a tailored replacement. So this leads to a really nice HVAC install with a decent margin and happy clients. Like, this is what you want. When you see people talking, $20, $25, $30,000 tickets, this is how that happens. And it happens without coercion. There's nothing bad about this. You are just giving them a solution to a problem that they want to fix. So there we are. A whole bunch of crap that I learned on this one. And I know there was more. Yeah, educate and offer options. This is something I did kind of a bad job on this. I didn't give this guy enough options. And I kind of regret that. Always give options that there's basically no way in hell that someone will take. Because there's always some wiggle room. Because there is no such thing as 100% certainty. There are no guarantees. If you are offering guarantees, you're probably not understanding all the pieces of the puzzle. There's no guarantees. There's odds of success. You can get 90%, maybe there's 95% certainty, but there is no 100, because houses are complex and people do dumb stuff. Like, after this project, he kept the windows open with 2 dehumidifiers. You're killing me, dude.
Well, that's what the dehumidifiers are for. He wanted to open his windows. Duh.
I guess the only good part is he added so much extra sensible that his air conditioners had some work to do.
That's the illogical way to fight climate change.
Well, you know
He's
what?
going to dehumidify the outside.
It's driving up electricity usage, and that new generation is going to be renewable. So, this house uses upwards of 30,000 kilowatt hours a year. plus natural gas for heating, like plus another 1,500 therms. And it's not a small house. It's like 5,000 square feet, but holy cow. There we are, Tom. Yep. Hey, thanks for speaking up. We have all made these, and this needs to be talked about more. And the answer is process.
Sandler, baby.
Yep. Sandler sales process. You can't teach a kid to ride a bike at a seminar. Get the book and read or listen to it.
Multiple times. One time doesn't do it.
No, one time doesn't do it. It might be 10, but like, not all the way through. This is not, it's kind of like reading the Bible start to finish. It's really not the best way to enjoy it. You want to stick to certain chapters and listen to those until they really go through. So educating and offering options. I did not do a wonderful job on this one because I didn't do the full CPP. So I just gave him the options that I thought were best path for the shell. That's all I gave him. So that also meant that because I didn't give him a bunch of options, if a client takes everything you offer them, who owns the results? You do. So offer more. I got bid on another one of those that I can't talk about actually because the client got so pissed. So that sucked. He was, we'll just say he's a character, which is a word that I've heard before, but gets used here a lot in West Virginia. He was definitely a character that can be just kind of a fun, unusual guy, or it can be a jerk. I'll let you pick one. But
he was offered duct design,
but not well enough. That was my fault. I didn't offer duct design, and I didn't offer spray foaming ductwork in the crawl space. And those two things led to a failure. Like not a massive failure in the project, but less than ideal considering all the work that we did. So anyway, you want to offer options and offer things beyond what people are going to take. So I failed at this one too. And all of this together has led to this process. So when we say the process is sacred, it's because it helps keep you out of stupid situations like what I just did. Will it keep you out of all of them? No. But this is like bumpers on the bowling alley. You're likely to hit something, or if you do manage to jump from one alley to the next, what the hell's wrong with you? You threw it way too damn hard if you jump the bumpers.
Yeah, in the beginning, you're not going to throw 300 games, but you'll do better.
Yeah.
It won't be zeros.
Yeah. I need to find that slide. I have it. I took a bunch of pictures of my daughter bowling with one of the little roller thingy helpers plus the bumpers. And yeah, it's just kind of a fun little thing. Although I didn't take a picture after she hit something. So who knows what she hit that time. But this process is built from hard experience. And what's really important here is this is teachable and trainable to entry-level talent. Everyone here is very talented. We are all at the top of our game. So we can do things and get away with things that other people can't. But when you are learning something new, I mean, lots of technicians watching, when you learn something, you learned in a very specific order, right? There's a reason for that. And maybe you knew why, and maybe your journeyman just beat the crap out of you. But either way, that's the way you do it now. And so the order of the process is really important, because if you skip steps or you go out of order, the odds of things going sideways and you irresponsibly owning responsibility are pretty high. So this is not us being jerks. This is us trying to actually help bring other people along. And I wanted to introduce something tonight kind of in the same realm. So I don't know if anybody here knows John Barba. He is Taco's head trainer. So Taco basically makes like every pump on hydronics. I know there's a couple of other brands, but I think they have the majority of the market. And he's been training contractors for years and years and years. And we spent some time together at AHR this year. And he told me about this way of breaking down contractors. And this applies kind of everywhere. So at the top, you've got artists, where every job is art. These people tend to break new ground, but they lack repeatable processes, so they tend to get stuck size-wise. Oftentimes they're one-man bands or they're kind of small outfits. This was me. This was definitely my father, who did some of the most spectacular car restorations you've ever seen. He was just incredible. He was one of the worst teachers I've ever met. He was just miserable. He was abusive and he was a shitty teacher to boot. So it wasn't that fun to work with. So while artists are definitely important, this is not what shifts industries. And like, I've got a great data set from
we're trying to appeal to the businessmen and the rest.
Yeah.
Not the artists. Although we have appealed to the artists early on.
Yep.
And they ended up getting kind of really fart sniffery.
It ends up getting in the way, unfortunately. I mean, Bergman gave me this wonderful data set for static pressure that showed that 70% of systems, and these are from people that are measuring, so the odds are reality is actually worse. 70% were above 1/2 inch and 47% were over 0.7. At 0.7 with an ECM, that's the beginning of early failure risk. It's not like at 0.7, call the fire department, it's about to fail, but you probably won't get full lifespan out of that blower. You're probably going to lose a year or two out of it, maybe more. And then when you get to an inch, all kinds of other things start happening. So that's just one metric to look at. And I mean, Bergman also talks about how something like 90% of systems out there have a detectable fault, whatever that might be, low charge, low airflow, high static, whatever it might be. So most systems out there suck. As an artist, this is one thing that as Ted and I were working on developing this for some form of scalability, not knowing what the hell it looked like yet, I can do 10 or 20 of these projects a year. That's all I'm good for. Is that going to change anything? No. If we don't want 70 to 90% of jobs out there to suck, to actually be qualified as bad, as severely substandard, we have to shift everything. And to do that, we need a repeatable process. So John, what I thought was really interesting is he said there are some businessmen that are artists, but the fundamental difference between them is repeatability. And that really struck me. So basically, the businessman can figure out how to do things and train people repeatably, which is very important. But I've noticed, this is my own way of looking at it, but I see some that are profit focused. And if you're online, you have seen the type. Jeff is mocking.
Unfortunately, I'd say a majority from my experience.
Yeah.
Profit focused.
And some of them maybe fan of the cocaine.
Well, the problem isn't that they're profit focused. The problem is that they're volume focused.
That can be it too.
So,
quantity over quality, correct.
Quantity over quality, whereas this process allows for quality to actually trump closing rates, margins, all of that stuff, so that you can actually double your revenue with 70% of the leads. So you don't even
imagine
need more leads. You can have less leads.
Imagine what you could do with what you had and make it better and make more.
Right.
And have better experience all around.
Yep. Yeah, that's the other variety, or the client-focused folks who are really looking to solve whatever their client is trying to solve and give them options to get there. So, Jeff, I didn't tell you this, but Ronnie texted me today, and he went in for a free quote and 2-system house. The other system also installed by his company, and it was a basic system, single stage furnace, single stage air conditioner. He sold them a variable furnace with a 5-stage heat pump on top. So that was $5,000 more for that system. And the client had already bought another one. And the difference was the educational pieces of the free quote. It was 2 videos, 90 seconds and 4 minutes. 5.5 minutes was worth $5,000, is what that works out to be. And so if you truly work to solve your clients and you offer them options and you don't care what they choose, that's the hard part. Is as soon as you start caring, you put your cape on. You are there as a consultant. That's it. You're there to help them understand what their options are, likely ramifications, and costs. What would you like? Choose your own adventure. And it is shocking how often people buy better stuff. I mean, we've talked in the past. I mean, you flip from 85% single stage to 85% variable, at least.
And it's kind of crazy of the amount of people that kind of get their mind blown about that, when it's really simple when you stop and think about it. Of like, okay, what is taking place? Like, what's the fundamental difference in someone that just buys the single stage versus someone that buys the variable speed? It's simply that they understand what they're buying. Most people, they're just going through the motions of like, okay, I know what you're here to do. I know what you're going to offer me. I'm going to pick this and we're going to go on about our day. And so by changing things up and you're changing the pace, you're pulling them out of that, just going through the motions. And then they stop and go, oh, wow, I didn't realize this was something that you could actually do. Like, this is an option. Wow.
Yeah.
And that's when people actually go, okay, well, let's give this one an option, or give this one a try.
That doing it without coercion is key.
Yes,
absolutely. You can't want it more, and you got to listen, and it's what you get. So that's an awesome job by Ronnie.
Yeah, I was happy to hear that. And Ted, it always cracks me up. You call that 70 seconds. It's 90. Feels like 70. It was a hell to get to 90. I wanted 60, and there was no freaking way.
Nobody's ever called me and said they want their 20 seconds back.
Like my 20 cents, please. So anyway, I liked this way of looking at it, and the rest is everyone else. I mean, so here's your truck and a truck. Here's your, I mean, the chuck and a truck, it's both good and bad. It's absolutely necessary. There's always going to be cheap clients out there. You're going to have rental properties that need to be worked on. And that's going to largely be done by guys who one day said, screw this, my boss makes more than me, I'm going to do this. And then they go out and they do it too cheap. And after a while, oftentimes they end up going back. That's not going away. I was a chuck and a truck doing insulation. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And you know what? I made more money when I didn't know what I was doing. When my work got better, I made less money. So part of the whole quest of 2.0 has been, how do we actually make the same or better money by doing good work, where otherwise doing good work that you aren't charging enough for puts you out of business in time. We don't want to see that. But anyone who's in the rest can move up to the other ones if they so choose. But I'd like to submit that the businessmen that are client focused are kind of the best way to go. You're going to have happy clients. You'll have less marketing dollars you need to spend because you'll get lots of referrals. The clients being happy doesn't suck. As my father-in-law is funny, he's very introverted. And one of his lines is like, if somebody says, hey, I'll see you around. And he says, not if I see you first. And I've seen him do this. He recognizes someone in the grocery store, and he like jumps to the next aisle so they don't see him back. So he's introverted. I get it. But it's nice when you have happy clients to bump into them out in public, because that's happened to me plenty of times. And it's really pleasant when you're viewed well in the community and not with any negativity. Obviously some clients view me with some negativity, like this one, but I don't know that he hates me necessarily, but it was not super satisfying for either one of us. But I thought this was interesting. What do you guys feel like this fits some? Does it ring any bells?
Yeah, I think so. I think there is one thing that I feel like one of the reasons artists tend to really get hung up on what it is that they do is because, I mean, everyone is probably at some point in their life, if you're like managing people, you become a micromanager where you want things done just absolutely perfectly your way. And if it's not, then it's going to bother you. But then Exactly. But if you stop and think about it, it's like, okay, well, how much more stuff could we get done if I wasn't worried about the tape going horizontally versus going vertically? Like, how much does this really matter? How much of these small details that only matter to you matter? And that's what artists tend to, really get hung up on. To where a businessman, you kind of have to go, okay, the tape's not going to go on the way I want it to. It's probably not. But as long as it gets the job done and as long as it performs properly and it meets our quality control and we can scale that, that's what we're after. And so it takes some kind of getting past the point of going, okay, I need it to be exactly the way that I want it to for reasons of no reason. It's just, I just want it that way.
I should have put a sweet spot chart in here.
Is this John's chart?
No, I made this for him. So we had a pretty nice conversation back and forth. It's supposed to be a pyramid, but because the rest is so large and the template that I used, it looks like a candy corn with Christmas colors or something.
I would almost put the businessmen and the artists side by side. It almost looks as though the businessman is aspiring to be an artist to reach the top.
I could see that too. And in this case, I was just trying to show that there's fewer artists there.
Okay.
But yeah, in normal, usually in the hierarchies, you want to be at the top.
Even a split, differentiate the profit-focused businessman from the client-focused, so we see which one is the better achiever.
Yeah. That's going to be fun as we get everything rolled out and we can actually track a whole bunch of metrics and then compare. And all of us can compete. And I think everybody here enjoys competing. I know I do. Like I did these projects planning on competing. So I was like pretending like there was someone that I was competing against. So I didn't want to leave anything on the field as I did these, which is part of what made this job so damn hard, because I wasn't okay with half-ass. If I was okay with half-ass, I could have half-assed a bunch of stuff on this project and had it be okay. Oh, one other thing to talk about, and I have been really guilty of this in the past, although I think everyone here would agree that I try to take very complex concepts and boil them down. And like you were just saying, Tanner, like you have to figure out what matters and what you can live with. There's got to be heuristics to things. We all make decisions by heuristics, which I don't remember the exact definition of it. Maybe one of you guys knows it better, but it's rules of thumb and it's gut feels, because we can't all deep dive into decisions for every decision that we make. We need to have an idea of, this or that. I mean, that's part of why like political parties are popular. Yeah, there's intuition. There's a bunch of pieces of it. But what happens all too often is the masters accidentally raise the drawbridge with overcomplexification to the newbies, and make it seem like, boy, there's no way we can get there. You can absolutely freaking get there. But like all of us, you're going to have to do the work. You got to start wax on, wax off. Why the hell am I doing this? Shut up. Wax the car. Keep going. You're going to have to take the hazing or whatever the process looks like. And so what we're trying to do is find a way to meet people where they are. And we have failed at this for a long, long time, to be frank. Because the comfort consults and the more advanced performance stuff and learning how to do load calcs and stuff, it's a lift. Like it's a first rung of a ladder. It's like 6 feet up. It's not that you can't do it, but there's not that many people that can jump, grab a 6 foot tall rung and actually get up. So the free quote process we've been working on, that truly lowers the drawbridge. So you can just be some kid off the street, which is what we're going to have to train as an industry for a long, long time. The average tradesman is in their 50s. I mean, that's not sustainable. Ken, you are still fully ambulatory. Ken did a far better job crawling around my crawl space than I did. It was far more willing.
In my rear view mirror.
That was the warranty on this job. I recognize that, but anyway, it's important that we train newbies. So we need to give them solid processes and help them with wax on, wax off, and then lead them into learning what the moves are that they were learning and doing that, and keep working their way up. But like particularly as we're moving into more complicated equipment, I mean, if you think inverters are going away, I got news for you. You think ECMs are going away? I really got news for you. Like those suckers are mandated. It's done. So if you don't start getting used to a couple of things like static pressure and variable speed equipment and diagnostics on them, you're going to get left behind.
I think people are going to really like the static pressure. I put the video in there, but they're going to like the static pressure question and the way that it's addressed to the consumer in the free quote, so that they got their CYA. It's easy. It's repeatable. It's documented.
Yeah, where did I put that in here? Back a ways. Crap, I don't even remember where I stuck it in here, but it's in here. It's well, offer and decline will definitely do it. If you offer people options right here, if you let people understand, hey, most systems have higher static pressure than they should, or duct pressure, as we call it, so homeowners follow you. We can test this and offer them some reasonable number for it, if at all possible, like 25 or 50 bucks. The point is to make money change hands, not to make money on it, because you're there for free quote anyway. But if you measure, the odds are it's going to be out of spec, and then you're fairly likely to further on to a different conversation, whatever that might be. I mean, if we're going to keep same size, we really should do variable speeds. So most of the time it's not running at those high pressures. There's a bunch of different ways to do this, but you have them sign off whether they want the testing or not. And then it's documented, and you just responsibly avoid a responsibility.
Hey, if your equipment ends up not running within manufacturer's spec, the manufacturer may not replace that blower motor after a year. Are you willing to take that responsibility that your ductwork needs to be modified?
Yep. So, and these are all the little steps, but that is now part of wax on, wax off. Go ahead, Tim.
One thing too, when I found is when people own their decisions, if they make the wrong ones, you can still keep that relationship. You're still adult to adult. And I've had a few projects like that, and maybe we can talk about some of them in the coming weeks, where they choose what they choose, and sometimes they're not as happy with the results as they, could have been, or part of the results they're happy with and part they aren't, and that has not forcing them on them and letting them not being the hero, and just being the guide and letting them make their own decisions has, saved a lot of
relationships. In and out of helium.
What was that? My voice.
You've got helium balloon there.
He's hitting a second puberty.
I think he's giving you a hard time for voice cracking, Tim. Wait,
am I?
Your voice cracking? What's going on?
I think it's your microphone, because it's kind of
it's always the microphone.
It's always
the
microphone. Yeah. Blame that.
I need to return it.
Tim actually comes in and shows a little bit of flank, Ted, and you go and smack him. I see how it is.
That was nice compared to
that's true. That is very low volume
for
the
Ted. Video. You'll get a laugh out of it.
That's not even
can't hear what we're hearing.
That's not even heavy, Ted. That's okay, Ted.
But yeah, that's such a key point too, Tim. Like when you help people own stuff, and I've got in onboarding, think of the scales of justice, and most of the time contractors end up owning all the weight. Oh yeah, this will work. Yeah, I guarantee it. Don't say that. It's a single stage piece of garbage that's too large. You are not going to fix little Johnny's room. You're just not. And you can't put another duct in to make that go away either. Like that's not how it gets fixed. But now you own it, and you have to go over there and pretend like you're changing something to fix it. Well, you're going to adjust charge and airflow. Those are your options.
Yeah, a lot of companies are starting to get really eaten up on warranty reserve. Really eaten up because of the oversized equipment and undersized ductwork.
Yep. Where on the other hand, if you're doing a good job of responsibly avoiding responsibility, if they choose poorly, they own the whole thing. Right, Tim?
Right.
If you offer them some better options and they choose a better option, you co-own that. Now you're partners in it. You're no longer owning all of it. So you can have an adult to adult conversation, like you said. Just like 2 weeks ago, talking about Adam with that cape where he complained about high humidity. A, we didn't know if it was high before because he wasn't measuring it. And B, we had offered kitchen ventilation and a ventilating dehumidifier, but they got cut because of budget. Would you like to spend that now? No. All right. Well, $250. Go get yourself a dehu and see if that does the job. But it very well might. And I didn't hear about it again, so I think it did. So there's ways to get there. But if you don't set this up, if you don't build your own matrix, you're going to get your butt kicked just like I did on this job. Sooner or later.
Yeah, it was a very good learning experience.
I don't want to do that again. That was bullshit.
I think we can end the broadcast on that. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week when we're actually going to, I'll show you what this project really looked like. You saw one little piece of it, but I'll show you through the whole thing. So see you.